Welcome to Fortify Your Future, a podcast for professionals who have executive oversight or aspirations of leading the safety and security function for their organization. I am your host, Ken Carrasco, and joining me on the episode today is Nick Berberian. Now, Nick serves as president and managing partner of Global Secure 3, leveraging his extensive experience as a renowned expert in the physical security industry. With over 25 years of experience across diverse sectors, including higher education, banking and finance, oil and gas, retail, government contracting, healthcare, and high tech, Nick has established a distinguished reputation. As the first management employee at GS3, starting in 2010, Nick has since held leadership roles in security departments at prominent organizations. Notably, he served as head of physical security and emergency management at AAA Insurance, and most recently as director of protective services and security operations at Stanford Medicine. In this latter role, he led security teams responsible for multiple hospitals, clinics, and the university before returning to GS3 in January 2024 as president and managing partner. Hey, Nick, thank you for joining me today.
Well, thank you very much, Ken. I appreciate it. And I appreciate you adding a couple words in there. I think you boosted my bio up just a little bit. So I appreciate it. Thank you.
Hey, man, well earned. Certainly, I've known you for a few years now, and certainly definitely respect what you contribute to the industry, your experience and skill set. And I think you add a lot of value to what we do and to professionals alike. So I'm so happy that you were able to join us today. And on the podcast, what I like to do right out of the gate is what I refer to as lead with value. So what's one thing, Nick, that you could provide to our audience that is actionable for them that they could take away?
Well, first, I could recommend, if you haven't reached out to me on LinkedIn, please do so. I'm happy to connect with you one-on-one on the side. I'll just kind of reference back to the impact of that. So I get reached out to often by a lot of transition veterans, mostly Marines. They see the Marine Corps in the back, especially if they're looking to get into the security business. And so I'm going to come full circle with this, Ken, I promise. So that's why the LinkedIn connection is so important, right? So to lead by example, I have to find a path that I wish I would have taken, or if I would have known to take this path, I could have gone and utilize those same resources to get where I'm at today. Asking the right people the right questions helps cut down that time. So being a good leader, it's important for you to give back with those that were in a position that you were once in. And so that's a quick way to sum it up. Like I said, we can even talk about it one-on-one. If you connect on to my LinkedIn, that's Nick Berberian, pretty straightforward.
Great, Nick. Hey, really appreciate that. And I encourage our audience to take advantage of these opportunities. All of our guests have been, gracious with their time, have been willing to connect on a one-on-one basis. And at the end of the day, man, the time is your most valuable asset that you have. So, the opportunity to connect with professionals in the industry and folks that have a wide range of skills and experience, you'd be dumb not to take advantage of those sorts of connections. And at the end of the day, in a total agreement, it's about building relationships over time. So, really thankful for you and for that offer. Hey, Nick, so you mentioned about being a former Marine, and one thing, and really the driving factor why I really wanted to have you on the show is about your career story. You're, as you said, you were a Marine, so you came out of military, and you've done a number of different things, held a number of different positions and opportunities that came across, your career path. But can you talk to us about really your career story, how it started, some learning lessons that you had over the course of, your career, things that are important to you that made you successful, and perhaps share those things with people and give them some examples of how you were able to successfully transition?
Absolutely. I mean, first and foremost, I think my whole life has been a learning lesson. I think I am, if you looked at it compared to our education system, I'm probably still in kindergarten, and I'm searching for my doctorate. So many more lessons to learn, hopefully from others, not from my own mistakes is one of the things we try to focus on. But just kind of give a recap of, the background and aligning it with the leadership functions and tenets that have held me and pushed me moving forward. So fortunately for me, I come from a family where pretty much every male in my family, my father, pretty much since they came to this country, has served in the military, been a firefighter or a police officer or a combination of both. right? My father were both in the Army during Vietnam. They both were police officers for 30 plus years and both worked corporate security at the end of it. So growing up in a family like that kind of helps set the parameters of where you want to go after, right? And so my brother, he's an older brother. He went into law enforcement right after college. I didn't want to go to college. I was like, you know what? I already knew what I wanted to be. I wanted to be a firefighter. I was like, I'm not going to waste my time, A, B, and C to become a firefighter, or I could join the military branch and they could train me and I could be paid to be a firefighter right out of high school. Right. And for me, that was a no brainer. School was good. I was doing really good in school. I finished my math requirements at a very young age. I just had no desire to sit and learn general education. I wanted to focus on a career. And so when I went in, I graduated high school in 99. Frame. So I'm like, okay, I know I'm going to be a cop or a firefighter when I get out. It's written in my stars. It's in my DNA. There's no male on my dad's side of the family that's done otherwise, right? It's a very small fraction of those that do. And coming from my dad and my uncle's side, like I said, it was kind of written in the stars. Again, at 99, there wasn't conflict. The military was, de-escalating, that we're moving out of, bases in the United States. We're moving out of the Middle East. It was, at the time, there was no anticipation of conflict at that time. One set of, conflicts and stuff worldwide that we would be involved in at the time, late 90s, it wasn't really quite, that environment. And so I was like, well, what do I want to do? I was going to do security forces or crash fire rescue. Security forces that's pretty legit, kind of what we do, security. But then the last 2 years, you're infantry, right? I'm like, who wants to just hump hills with a pack for 2 years, right? That's not what I wanted to do, even though, hindsight, it would have led me down a different path. I was like, I want to do my job. I want to do my job right now. And I want to do it for the whole time I'm in. And so fortunately, I chose crash fire rescue. So the caveat with that is when the Marine Corps, you don't pick a specialty, you pick a range. So I could have been ordnance or I could have been crash crew, right? So it's like I could have loaded bombs or I could have got my dream job. And it's like you get one, you can't just jump and say you don't want it, right? And so it is a gamble with anything, like you're gambling that you're going to get this job. But fortunately, my ASVAB scores helped me get what I ended up wanting to get. So that gets me into the Marine Corps, right? At the beginning, you really don't know what to expect. You've read movies, you've seen everything. The Marines are really good at testing your leadership skills, throwing you into an environment where you have no choice but to lead, or fail your team where everybody suffers. So, it's not a traditional way where you teach kids on a sports team or a location where you have time to develop these skills. You're thrown into these situations immediately, right? And, fortunately for me, I come from a family where, honor, Call of Duty is all part of our tenets in our DNA. My dad always used to tell me, be the leader that you want to follow, right? So what that meant to be is, I'm looking at what's going on around me. If I had the choice, if I had the ability to be in his shoes, his or her, well, at this time, his shoes, what would I do different? Would I be compassionate? Would I throw my people under the bus? Would I take all the hits from everybody and not let anybody take the blame or responsibility from me? How would I balance out what's going on? Would I do a different job? Would I find the things in those that you like, take it with you, and the things that you don't like, you discard? You don't have to follow just one type of leadership and find just Nick's skill sets. You can find, you have 4 different drill instructors. Find the things you like from each one of them, hone in on that, focus on that, find the things that you don't like and you discard it and you make sure you never do that again, right? And so you start peeling away at these layers when you're in boot camp, because it's not like you have this long program where it's a slow drip feed. I mean, you're inundated from the second you step on the yellow footprints till the second you graduate, right? You're going and you're getting inundated with information, leadership, high risk situations that in all hindsight help prepare you for these mundane leadership and critical decisions we have to make now in the corporate world. Not to say that it's not as impactful, but now when we're in a corporate world and we get faced with a decision, my common response to everybody that freaks out about is, are you being shot at? Right? You got some time to think about it. Let's pause for a second, take a deep breath. Let's work on this together. It's not life or limb. If it is, it's a different story. You have a different job function. So I would say that kind of, having the family and, the DNA foundation help create the mindset to receive the information and focus on the things that I was told would be helpful for me. So going into Marine Corps was a good transition because, you do ask for some things in the Marines, right? So I ended up graduating as a squad leader, promotion, whatever. But it was one of those things. The only reason why I got it is because I told the drill instructor I deserved it, because I was a squad leader for a little while. had something happen. I got injured and I was out for a couple of days, so they replaced me right away. Then the other squad leader that took my place, he got injured. And the drill instructor's like, I'm not putting anybody in this place. Nobody deserves this. Not a single one of you in here deserves to be a squad leader who run the squad without a squad leader. Like, how are we going to do that? And we're sitting there and we're in a squad bay. We're going to just sit around. I'm like, I deserve it. Again, you don't say I's and we'll escape the whole, this recruit type of third person talk. But I basically went to the drill instructor and said, I deserve it. I should be the squad leader. I can lead these men. And he sat there very receptive, screamed the hell out of me, threw a bunch of stuff at me, and kicked me out of his office. About 30 minutes later or so, calls everybody up, makes it a point to call me out, disparage me, and then name me as the squad leader and say I'm pretty much the only one that had to come on. He stand up to him and take what he felt was his. And so, while you understand the foundations, you have to focus on what needs to be done based on how you've been raised, what you've been around. Sometimes you have to take that leadership by the horns and you got to run with it, right? Leadership's not always going to be given like, hey, Nick, you've done a great job in the last 3 years as a sales representative. Just because you've done a good job making us lots of money, we're going to make you a manager now. That's probably the opposite, right? It doesn't work that way, especially if you're making money at sales. They're going to want you to stay right there. Corporations aren't necessarily designed that way. Some are, some support internal growth, but sometimes if you see something that needs to be changed, you go get it and you make the change yourself, right? And so, that kind of carried with me into, again, this is my foundation. I got the foundational DNA from my family. My first real job in this world that I've learned anything, 18 and up, was Marine Corps boot camp. The expectation of excellence, right? The weight of the world on your shoulders that if you mess up, your brothers get hurt, your sisters get hurt, people may not come home, the decision's yours to make, right? And so what that does is that, that could be a detriment to a lot of people. People get in this, failure to decide cycle because now they feel there's too much weight and they're not used to making decisions with that much weight on their shoulder. And they just get in this decision loop where they keep questioning everything. Don't get me wrong. It's good to make a calculated decision on things. But once you get into this position where you're making a constant decision loop where you can't decide on something, you keep running it over, you're stagnant, and some decisions better than no decision, right? Especially depending on, the situation dependent. Moved into more of like the contract world after that. Like I said, pre-call, I did some work for some other agencies, worked in Middle East, South America, did stuff on maritime. And, kind of the story with that of how I transitioned out of the contract world was exactly, part of the conversation. You make good money in the contract world. Back in the day in your 20s, you can make $15,000 a month, 500 a day plus working, a couple months at a time. You're living fat. You're living pretty good, right? And then you could go a couple months and not have any work. It's kind of this ebb and flow, being away from your families. The last one that I did was actually pretty cool. It was like it was a shipboard assignment. Ship launched rockets to space, went to the equator. We were on it for a month. It was like the coolest thing you could think of for the first 2 weeks. Last 2 weeks, we're sitting there in an empty bay with literally nothing. There's nothing in here, but it's part of the job. We're still getting paid. And we just sit in an empty bay where a satellite rocket used to be for 12 hours a day. For 2 weeks, 12 on, 12 off. And I sat there questioning my life. I was finishing my bachelor's degree at that time. And I was like, thank God I have something to do to keep me occupied. It's a dimly lit bay that I'm in for 12 hours. I get a break. I get 2 or 3 breaks. I got 2 or 3 breaks to go eat in the middle of that. That was it. So, 10 and a half to 11 hours straight doing nothing but staring at dimly lit, bay. And I honestly, Ken, I told you, I was like, I questioned everything. I was like, maybe I should just go to sales, or maybe I should just get out of security. Maybe I should go to cybersecurity, something. I felt that, what I was capable of doing was far more than what I was getting paid to do. Don't get me wrong. I needed the money, but the satisfaction in job and career was gone. There was nothing like, the first couple of weeks, and it was already gone. So fortunately, the timing of that worked where my daughter, she was in a year-round school and she was off of school for 2 weeks. And so I was like, this is perfect. I'm going to take her for a week. Me and her, just my little road trip homie, going from Northern California to Southern California, hitting up all the amusement parks, Magic Mountain, Universal Studios, and Disneyland. Just me and my daughter. It was phenomenal. I just made a boatload of money. My daughter's out of school. It was fun. I get down there. And so I was doing contract work with GS3 at the time. I was doing, I was, agent on details and so forth, filling guy, flex officer, whatever you want to call them. And I get a call from GS3, and they asked me if there was any interest in coming on full time in a regional director role to help with the operations. I was like, yeah, tell me more about it. I'm gone with my daughter. Let's connect when I get back. Um, as we're all aware in the enterprise security, especially like in the initial stage, I think GS3 was like brand new, less than a year old at that time. Well, the conversion to GS3 was less than a year old from JMN. And there was a pay cut. Like if I took what I made the previous 3 months, it was almost what they were offering me for a year. It's like,
Yeah.
Jesus, like this hurts. However, when I'm looking at it, I'm like, I have no work lined up for 2, 3 months. So, there's that side of it where I don't know when my next paycheck's coming in just yet, how much it's going to be. So spending, you got to be a penny pincher because you don't know if you're going to make money, which is stress in itself, right? I always used to tell people, and I've repeated this several times, working those jobs was working 3 jobs. You had to work one job to find the contacts to get to the right people to find the job to get the job. Then you got to work the job itself, right? The hours that's spent doing the job. And then depending on who the employer was, their job is trying to get paid. There's a lot of people in this industry that are quick to find bodies to throw in a detail and then neglect to pay them for a month
Yeah.
until they get paid from their client. And then they pay you in a 1099. And it's like, you gotta plan for that. Right. And so it's not a very pleasant situation to be in, especially when you have a child to care for, and house payments and, stuff like that. And so weighed against it, I was like, you know what? This is what I need. It's a change. I'm not working details. I could use my brain. And I'm glad I did because it helped expose me to parts of security that I never knew existed, from the security risk assessments, threat assessments, just kind of, more of the investigation side of things. It really, expanded my idea of what security is, and it continued to grow. And, I was there for about 7 years in that role. And then one of our clients poached me, which was phenomenal and a good thing for GS3, because then I brought GS3 into a bigger role within the organization. That was AAA, it was AAA insurance. So it was split up. But, and so I spent 5.5, 6 years there. I ran the security emergency management. That was a unique one because I've always been on small man details. Now, director of a small company. Now I'm head of a department for a multi-billion-dollar organization. That this will be the 30,000 foot overview. So they're AAA. There's like 16 different AAAs, right? Here in California region, there's AAA Club, which covers, I don't know how many states there are now, probably a lot. And then AAA insurance. At the time we were in basically, if you cut the United States in half, top to bottom, we basically covered all the north half of the United States. So we had like 26 states that fell under our responsibility. And I'm running this, we have 20 plus facilities, large, 100 plus employees. It's a full beast. And it's kind of like, well, they trusted me, and they trusted that I would vibe and gel with the rest of the people there. Because when you're in a corporate environment, in most cases, unless it's a startup or it's a new role or something, there's a good support system there, right? But you got to look for the support system, right? That's, it's not necessarily going to be laid on the table that everybody's previous positions, their experience, who they can support and so forth. So being able to gel with everybody, you get this information. I tell everybody my first month there, I thought it was a joke. Like they were gonna prank me or something, that people are really this nice. I was like, this can't be possible. And, it's like, I just came from a company that was all Marines. I mean, we literally, like, everybody in our leadership team was Marines. And it was like, and then I go to this environment where everybody's just like so caring and loving and they're giving. I'm like, look, you're going to have to give me a minute to ease into this. Right. And so it is, I mean, it's funny, but we used to do this with a lot of our guys that were fresh out of the Marines, military, or fresh from overseas on a contract or straight out of law enforcement. We would use that as a calculation on where we can ease them in, to where a soft environment, we may need to ease them into that. Like a hard environment, when it's an environment where they're used to being into, let's ease into that first. Let's do the cross-border stuff. So the guys we want, our former Blackwater Academy guys, those are the type of folks we use for our cross-border stuff, for Brownsville to Matamoros, right? Those are our guys for that. But if we're looking at somebody that needs to be ultra sensitive in a corporate environment, you have to gauge the approach. And, I was one of those guys where it took me a little while. By the time I started at AAA, I've been corporatized enough to where it was pretty straightforward. But then, things changed, life changed a little bit. COVID happened, footprint, job responsibilities in an organization changed. Healthcare became more of a, present and, danger for us to identify. And so I moved over and I ran the security operations and protective services for Stanford Healthcare. I was there for about a year, and GS3 snagged me to come back. Like I said, there's always a place at home for me. I felt like no matter when I could, I always try to connect with GS3. It's a tight knit group. You know what I mean? We're all a family.
Yeah.
I've been here just 2 years and 12 days now. Exactly. It was January 9th, 2024 was my first day on. I started the day after my daughter's birthday. She's still my little road trip homie. So I took her to
Yeah.
Tahoe for her birthday. Yeah.
Great.
And I'm here now. I got, but still a few other things. I'm the president of two nonprofits. One we'll just say is I'm the founder of it. It's to support trafficked children, and the other one is the Association of Threat Assessment Professionals, where I'm the president of the Northern California chapter, which is also humbling because if you look at the demographic and the membership of the Northern California chapter of ATAP, you got some of the biggest players, some of the people who have written the books, that we're reading today. Dr. Kaywood. I always use Dr. Kaywood and throw him out there. He's my mentor in the business. He's somebody that I've not only used as a resource for support, but have leaned on him for personal growth and support, and then had him come in and train some of our folks too for our threat assessment teams that we put together. But that's my snapshot in about, I don't know how long that was, 15 minutes, I think. I can ramble on, but I've already had my full cup of coffee for today. So,
Yeah, no, that was great, Nick. There's certainly some nuggets in there that I emphasize, and when I think about listening to them, some key messages that hit me and what you just articulated in no particular order, but things that really struck me. Number one is your ability to adapt. Adaptability, I heard very strong in terms of what you articulated in terms of the things that you had to do, you had to change, you had to be open to. So adaptability, really, really key and important. Sometimes you have to wave your own flag. I've often said this too. When you talked about taking that leadership position, that squad leadership position, in the military, it's important for folks to know that in the private sector, it's no different. Sometimes you have to be your own cheerleader because if you put your head down and you just think that your work's going to be recognized, it may not always be the case. And so sometimes you have to wave your own flag. So very important to make sure that as you're delivering value and understanding that you're an exceptional team member, and sometimes you have to speak up for yourself in order to be able to get that appropriate recognition, certainly when it comes to leadership positions. So I think that's important as well. And so, again, some key things that I'm hearing: mentorship. You talk about ATAP. I'm a member of ATAP, and I appreciate all of the content and the experts that are there. I've been associated with ATAP for many years. In my opinion, one of the best organizations that are out there in terms of the industry, in terms of threat assessment and just everything that in and around, behavioral threat assessment management and all those things, and those individuals that are out here working every day to address these types of challenges in the industry and in business. And so I think, those are very key, important points that I took away from, your career story. And, again, I'm hoping that people will understand that it's a very dynamic thing. We all have our own stories and, our paths. It's not linear. We've when we really sit down and start talking about each one of us in terms of how we got to where we're at today and where we started, you find out all of these sort of nuances about people in the industry and the left and right turns that they needed to make and decisions that they made in order to get to where they're at today. And when it comes to leadership, I think a big part of that, and which you spoke to, and you talk about being open to change. I mean, being able to look at things in every opportunity and critically think about, what you needed to do in order to sort of get to that next step and prepare yourself for it. So all of those things are incredibly valuable for people to really understand and take away because, again, if they can relate to anything that you have said in your particular career story or the path that you've taken, with Secure 3 now, and I feel the same way. I still feel connected in a way
Yeah.
to GS3, even for, my minimum exposure, to the organization, but, long-term ties with the partners. And so you always sort of, have that lifelong connection as you continue to move forward. And like I said earlier, relationships are the key, and they are the most important thing. So as we move forward, we hope to continue to develop those things, and you never know how they come back around and how we end up working together or referring business to one another or just trying to help one another out with the same types of challenges that we face, within the industry. So, all important, again, especially for folks that are transitioning from the public sector into the private sector, whether they're former military like yourself or former law enforcement, or just folks that work in the government that are now finding themselves, coming into the private sector, corporate security world. There's adjustments that need to be made. They need to understand that things are a little bit different in terms of how they approach it. And so again, to your points, really important to really get a good understanding that there is some transition time that you have to sort of expect or anticipate. You're not going to be able to necessarily transition all of your skills and experience and map it right away, and you're going to be able to sort of, the way you conduct your business is going to be exactly the same, because it's just a different environment, a different world. And I think all of those things together are important to sort of digest and understand, and for some it's a little bit harder than others, but it's certainly doable. I think, there's more and more folks out there and resources available to help people with these types of transitions. And so, really key and important, I can't emphasize enough for folks that are listening, that are thinking about, or maybe they have a year left, or, right around the corner, they're either, retiring out or finishing, their terms or their assignments, however that looks like for them. It's important to reach out to folks that have already been through it and done it, like yourself. And so, very key, very important. So, well, let's talk about the future a little bit, and what's important for you, your next chapter, in this career story. The next thing, again, Global Secure 3 is really, it's a boutique risk management firm, a lot of services. Nick, I know that you guys are expanding, looking at being a global provider. What are you looking at in terms of the next phase for Global Secure 3? What is that looking like? And tell us more about what you see in terms of opportunities and things that are coming around the corner for Global Secure 3.
Yeah, absolutely. First, I wanted to say I appreciate the recap, because sometimes I talk and I just fire things off and I just go, especially when I'm on a
Yeah.
roll. And honestly, I've had about half as much caffeine as I normally do, but I kept going, and then you were able to recap that up pretty solid, and I appreciate it. That was good. No, so there's a lot going on. This is a big year here in California. We got the Super Bowl coming on. So we're currently licensed in California, Arizona, and Texas. Texas will have some. California is going to be busy, right? With the World Cup coming up here soon. We have like I said, the Super Bowl here in a few weeks, where we're doing quite a few projects with clients. And so,
Nice.
this is a very strategic year for us. I don't joke, but when I saw the name of your show, I was like, this is so fitting. So I'm a theme guy, Ken. I'm a theme guy. So when I first came on the GS3, my theme was Fortify the Foundation. That was my thing for the year.
Cool.
And so it's aligning. And I was like, it's actually, it's pretty funny, because the mindset's still very similar. And it's like, okay, you got to fortify the foundation, right? You can't grow anything unless you know what foundation you're working with, right? Is it built? Is it solid? Do you need to shore things up? Do you find your weaknesses, vulnerability, strengths, not only in process procedures, but personnel within your team? Who's capable of doing what, the evaluation and so forth on how you categorize different people. So, that was the focus, is fortify the foundation. Year 2 is built to scale. Right. So we made quite a few changes. Year 2, it was primarily in personnel folks, alignment with the direction of the organization, the needs that we were anticipating, right? And so this is always a gamble, right? When you're going to an organization that already has a structure, you already have a structure that's working and it's profiting, and you're in this world. It's like, okay, why are you going to change things, right? And it's like, well, you gotta, when you're looking at things from I'm a multi-dimensional chess player, man. I can do 3D chess with you. Like I'm thinking 6 plays ahead on how I want to do it. And it was a bit of a gamble. The turnaround did take longer than I was anticipating, than I calculated, but the turnaround did happen. Like anything, when you have a disruption in an organization, whether it's personnel, processes, procedures, just anything in general, the way things are done, there's like the slinky effect, right? You go, 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 and then it stops and you got to keep picking it up because there's no real consistent program just yet. And that's what you're building on. You're trying to prevent the slinky, but until you prevent the slinky, you're spreading, you're catching up, you're spreading, you're catching up. We're at a point right now where we've got the right personnel. It's fortunate enough because, you know, I've had to add personnel. Not as, I don't want to say a significant number, but you know, in order for us to do what we needed to do, I had to find those who were skilled enough to help us get there. Right. Which means that we got to pay them a wage that they need to get paid. Right. And we got to find people that focus on there. So not being the sole owner of this organization isn't a hindrance. It actually helps with the guidance and, you know, due diligence, make sure you're doing everything right for not just yourself, but the partners and the rest of the organization in its whole. And so, you know, we did hire a lot. There were some things that we had to mitigate from previous employees that were helped, you know, make that a little bit more difficult. Some that helped, and so we ramped up on a cost. Well, now the transition happened about right before Q4, so the timing happened about 2 months slower than I was hoping it would, but it did happen. Meaning the turnaround in revenue, and you know, you kind of look at. So again, from a leadership perspective, I'm expected to know every component of the business. However, I don't need to be the expert in each one of the functions. I don't need to be an expert in finance. I don't need to be an expert in HR, but I need to know enough about each one of those to be dangerous and find the person who does know the most about what we need to do. And again, this goes back to leadership. You know, I don't know who this quote came from. Somebody that's watching it, I'm sure they can chime in. You know, you don't hire smart people to tell them what to do. You hire them for them to tell you what to do. You know, and I tell my team this the whole time because I'm not a micromanager, but what I want them to know is I'm going to put the vision at the end of the tunnel, right? And the reason why I'm putting it as a tunnel is because I'm going to set up barriers, whether it's, you know, hours, whether it's weeks, it's timelines, whether it's budget, whatever it may be, legal compliance, regulatory, any things that, you know, are going to keep the wheels on. Those are my parameters. Here's the end goal. Tell me how to get there. This is your world. You're operating in it all day, every day. To your knowledge, how are we going to get there? Because it's humbling to be a leader of an organization, especially as an owner and a president. And you're explaining a plan, and then you have one of your, you know, a manager or somebody say, that's not going to work. You're like, what do you mean? You have to take that cap off. You can't sit there and be like, I'm the boss. Of course, that's what we're going to do because I know everything. Nobody, first of all, be the leader you want to follow. Nobody wants to follow that guy. Nobody wants to follow the guy that's not going to take advice from his team, guy or girl, right? So be the leader you want to follow. So humbling yourself enough to say, you're right. Let's take a look at it. Explain to me what that means, right? You know, that's part of the growth and the trajectory. You got to have trust and, you know, trust into your team, trust and support for your team. Kind of got to where we are now within the last 2 years. So, part of that is growth. You talk about where we started with one state. We're now in 3 states. We're in the process of being licensed now in Minnesota and New York. We're also looking at some other strategic partnerships, and that's going to cover part of the United States as well. More to come with that. We did expand into Mexico. So we have our vendor Lula. I've worked with Lula for 15 years. So as a partnership and an acquisition of our company, we are now GS3 Mexico. So we're operating, wasn't for the whole year. We had a couple months into this. We started a couple months into 2025. So, you know, it's a different world. It's a different environment. We've learned a lot, not only, you know, I'm a very cautious I'm not risk adverse, but I'm a calculated leader. I like to make decisions. I like to actively make decisions. But I also like to make sure I've done my due diligence and research to make sure we're making the best decisions. And with that being said, the team works a lot. They're busy coming up with solutions for problems that I'm creating in anticipation of those problems occurring based on the present operations and future that we're going. With that being said, not everything as part of the plan is discussed, but at least the reasons, you know, not the reasons why, but the objectives are discussed, not necessarily the reasons at that time, because I want to get buy-in first from the team. You do it because if you discuss, this is my approach. If I discuss the reasons why I'm making these decisions with my team before getting their feedback on it, they're going to have a bias associated with it based on the information that I gave it. Hey, for example, like this project, we're going to get this project done. Near and dear to me. This was my grandpa's old house. It's been in my family. We got to do whatever we can to make this project work. Well, the team's going to hear the reason why you want to do this. And they're going to forget the logic behind it and be like, the boss wants to do this. He's passionate about it. I don't want to be the guy that opposes the boss. Right. So if you have an
Mhm.
objective, you're like, hey, I'm just using this because it's the first thing that popped in my head. Again, I still need like 3 more cups of coffee, but say you have an objective about something you want to do, and you're like, hey, we need to go into this property. We need to acquire this thing, and this thing, and settle the foundation. But what's the approach? How should we do it? Should we even do this job? Right. I'm just throwing a bunch of generic items out there. The team hears that and they're going to like, okay, let's look at the logic behind what are we doing? Is this the best approach? Good. Boom. We're going to make a logical decision, not an emotional decision. As much as there should be empathy in this role, their decision should be governed by logic in this role, right?
Mhm.
Especially when you have the fiduciary responsibility for the organization, the livelihood of all those that are you are responsible for. I can't make decisions that's going to impact them based on emotion. It has to be based on logic, right? And so, look, Ken, I go full wind with everything. And so the theme for this year coming up, I haven't disclosed it with everybody yet. But if you can think about the progression of what we've done, we've fortified the foundation. We've now built to scale. Now, what do we need to do? We're going to execute. Okay. And that's a little bit more to it than that, but we're going to execute on things. So
Yeah.
this year, the things that we've worked on, the things that we've built, and the things that we've developed are all going to be executed on. Most of them. Again, their proprietary information and goal setting is exclusive for our team next week to be released to. But I'm a theme person, I'm a goal oriented person, and it matriculates down to the team to be able to follow suit and align their both personal and professional goals with it along the way. So that being said, again, they're looking at more expansion. Mexico City is hot right now, right? I mean, you could say it's an opportunist approach to it, but at the end of the day, look, I don't create the violence in the world. I don't create the chaos in the world, but those who are thrown in the middle of it that don't want any part of it hope to see somebody like me in our organization here to protect it. Unfortunately, for those down in Mexico, it's a never-ending deal with the kidnappers, with the cartel. I'd hate to just isolate them and say the volatility of the government, but right now, state, there's a lot of volatility in all governments, not just third world, first world included in that. So being in a position to where we can support those who need support, to be geographically located, strategically aligned with those in those regions. At the end of the day, our goal is to keep people safe, right? And right now, I see the biggest impact for Americans, American travelers, American businessmen and women are going into the Latin American region. And so, with our solid footprint in Mexico City, that's our hub. We're going to continue to roll down through South America. We've got our eyes on a couple other regions to expand into. Right now, we have a full-time staff and office in Mexico City, in Puebla. We have operations in Monterrey. We can also hit your tourist sites on the coast, but a focus is really on business travel for executives within Mexico City, Monterrey. And, like I said, at the end of the day, our job is to keep people safe. It's a righteous job. It's an honorable job. Yes, we get paid for it, because if we didn't, we wouldn't be able to find the best people to do the job to keep people safe. I'd say Latin America is going to continue to be hot. I mean, we're watching a lot of stuff on the news. We're seeing a lot of protests. We're seeing a lot of anti-American sentiment going on. So for American travelers going down into those Latin America regions, there's a price tag on your head. No questions about it. Your companies most likely have some very qualified security professionals who've already identified this risk and have already applied a specific measure needed to mitigate that risk, which is a requirement from some kind of secure transportation executive protection combination, whether it's armed or unarmed transport, whether it's a solo vehicle or a motorcade. Depending on the risk and the impact of the organization, those qualified security directors out there hopefully have either created a plan or working on a plan based on the escalations in the region. We're here to be able to support those requests. And, I only see that as an arm of Global Secure 3 that's going to continue to grow and grow.
Great. No, that's awesome, Nick. I really admire your business strategy, no question, and more importantly, manner and method in which the way you lead your team and the organization. It is impressive, and I can't thank you enough for joining me today. I'm sure a lot of folks are going to take away a tremendous amount of value in terms of what you have provided. And so thank you again for being here. Really appreciate the time, and always a pleasure to talk with you, Nick. Thank you.
I appreciate it, Ken. You have a good one. Thank you. Take care.